Today on the Agronomy Answers podcast, hosted by Matt Thompson. Wait,
All right, what's going on?
hey, Zach. They were supposed to tell you. I'm taking over the show today. And I'm going to be asking you questions about the biological and natural space to see what you think about the future of this market.
All right.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I guess we're just putting me right on the spot here.
First question. What is your definition of the biological market?
My personal definition of the biological market is a lot of different things, either living or non-living products that I think of just as additives to the crop. So it's not the typical things that you might already be doing, like adding in your herbicide to kill weeds, killing insects, planting the seed. Those are all things. These are all additional things that can be added onto it, either living or non-living, that can help the plant in some way that's not, I wouldn't say normal, but it is normal. It's just not the way that you might think of it as a grower. If we're on the farm, we're not, the first things that we ever thought of were planting the seed. We are not thinking about all the little additional benefits that we could add on to the seed that could help it throughout the whole season. So that it's not really a direct answer, but that's kind of what I think.
Well, I'm just excited that many times when I ask folks what is their definition of biologicals, the first thing they say is living organisms, right? And you said living or non-living. And I think growers have to understand that this market is so much bigger than living organisms. Yes, living organisms is a very big portion of the market, but when we start thinking of amino acids, when we start thinking of plant growth hormones, when we start thinking of humic and fulvics, that's just a small category of the overall market. So to your point, the additives, that's kind of the standard definition. We say supplemental acre or supplemental products that go on the acre. Ultimately, we're just trying to make that plant more efficient.
Yeah, and it's taking things that the plant's already doing, but kind of pushing them a little bit, or just expressing it so it knows, it has other things that the plant's already knows about, that you're just applying that helps products get into the plant or helps it push more roots. It tells it to push more roots. So it's things that the plant already knows about. It's just now it's putting into a more concentrated form in other applications you're doing, I feel like.
So of all the categories that are out there, now that you've been in this role for the past couple of years, you've been around this space, what are you most confident in today versus maybe a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I would say fulvic acids for sure would be up there because,
Yep.
One, they're really cheap. We use them on our farm, and it's something that, since it's so cheap and what it does into the plant, helps moving in, well, we use it at fungicide timing, but moving fungicides into the plant, translocating them in the plant, helping basically push roots and just overall boosting for what it costs. It's super cheap for what it does. So that one for sure. But then also PGR type products like Mega Grow would be one that I would talk about because it's safening herbicides, which we're going to spray herbicides. And the more that I think about it, the more you're wait, why are we not trying to help the plant? Because you're spraying a toxin onto the plant that it's got to get through and basically metabolize. So by adding it in helps that process along so it goes quicker, and then the plant can get back to growing normally faster. So those are the two that I would say, and they're both really cheap, and we use them on our on all of our acres on our farm because of what we've seen in a million trials that we've done, and we've tested them on our farm a bunch because, like my dad always says, he's super skeptical and he does not like to try new things until they work. And then he likes to try them a lot.
So you brought up fulvic, right? Mm-hmm. You named off some of the important things in the fulvic. We always tell folks that fulvics do 4 things to a plant: open and release the plant stomata, transport mechanism within the vascular system of the plant, fine root hair development along the root system, and then lastly, the energy compound that goes in the mitochondria of the plant cell. Timing-wise, you said we liked it in the fungicide application. Don't disagree with any of that. Can we go other times? Absolutely. But for us, the most consistent time has been that fungicide application. Corn, beans, wheat, you name the crop. Fungicides with the fulvic is a huge recommendation. And you're seeing more and more people begin to have this conversation of humics and fulvics in the market. We like fulvics way more than we do humics from a foliar standpoint. If you're spraying soil or applying things in the dirt, humics then become part of that conversation. But for us, we've had fulvics in our portfolio since 2017. Millions of acres have now been applied by those products and saw a lot of success. You bring up Megagrow. Right? We've talked in previous episodes about the herbicide tax. I think that's probably the number one area in the market that growers can protect bushels on their farm. When that plant has to process and metabolize that herbicide, give it the tools that it needs to manage that aspect. Megagrow has been in the market since 2005. So, I mean, we're over 20 years now of that product being in the marketplace and a tremendous data package that's come with it. Where are you unsure of in the market, right? There's a lot of new things that obviously come to Hefty Seed Company. We are obviously testing a lot of things behind the scenes that the market hasn't seen yet. Where do you have questions about this market? Where do you see there are issues coming for understanding where we are at?
Well, I think the biggest things that I'm like kind of struggle with sometimes is more like biological, like actual living products,
Yep.
and then products that are variable like constantly. Because I'm just worried that if we're gonna spray it on our farm, I don't want half of it to be dead already because of something that's maybe already in the jug. Like I'm buying it half dead,
Yep.
and so that kind of scares me to think about that. So obviously, when I was talking about fulvics and some PGRs, those are not living,
Right.
so I don't have to worry about that. And the biggest thing why I'm comfortable with those as well as knowing when they don't work too, because like a PGR like Megagrow, you don't want to spray later in the plant
Right.
because it's going to mess it up. And with fulvics versus humics might clog up some tanks potentially.
Yep.
But fulvics are way more refined, more like a better like product most of the time,
Yep.
and like depending on the formulation that you have. So it's knowing like being comfortable with it and then knowing when to not use it too. But I feel like in the living space for me is where like my biggest like question mark where it's going to go in the future and be like trusting it that it's going to be okay, you know?
Yeah, and I'm sitting in my shoes since 2020. That's continues to be my number one question is for the amount of locations that we have and the acres that we cover, inventory becomes a concern, right? You're dealing with a living organism. How long is this going to stay alive in the container before we can get it to the field? There are some products today that we have in our inventory that we have to put in a freezer, right? Contans would be one for white mold control that has to be in a freezer in order for it to survive. And once it comes out of the freezer, you're good for a very limited window before that product has to make it to the field. Most average a biological product, if it's a living organism, it's about a 2-year shelf life. Now, some of the bacillus strains will last much longer than that, but there's a lot of inconsistency there too. For us, we like to get our inventory turned as much as we can, but more importantly, if the product is in dry form, I think we see more success with that than in liquid form. And it's because of that temperature variation. Are you freezing the product? Is the product getting too hot? Is there UV affecting this particular product? There's all these variables when it comes to living organisms that I would 100% agree with you. That is my biggest concern moving forward is as we start looking at amino acids, as we start looking at this new category called peptides, which peptides have completely blown up in the human aspect of human medicine. That's all non-living. They're all reactions after a living biology. So that gets me excited about this market, but concerned in the same breath of how do we continue to play with living organisms?
Yeah, and it's not that every one of them is not necessarily good, but it's when there's new product coming, you have to know, like, ask a bunch of questions about whatever it is, because if they don't know exactly if it's going to be living when I spray it or not, or if it's going to be safe with a herbicide, yet they want it to be with herbicide, then it's just kind of scary, like thinking, is that true or is that not true?
Right.
I need to do more testing on it to find out if it is or not.
So you now got your first piece of farm acreage, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're making decisions now. As companies come to you with these new products, for you to be comfortable with making that application on your farm, how many years of data do you want? You want to be on the new side, right? You want to be on the front end, but you also got to have some data to be comfortable with that decision. What makes you comfortable from a data collection standpoint?
I want a few years of data, but I also want to try it myself for a few years on like some different trial basis on like our farm, because I want to see it myself too, as well as a product that's been proven, or if it hasn't been proven, I want to prove it too, either way in a small scale. But it definitely takes like a few years if I was going to be like, okay, I'm definitely going to do this on all the acres for sure, which is not even that many acres. But then if I was going to make recommendations to the rest of our farm, like we should really do this more because I saw it do well for multiple years and helping in different situations. I mean, it definitely takes a few years of trying it and actually seeing no yield gain for a bunch of years. And it's like, okay, I don't know if I want to try this particular thing again, you know?
Yep. Yeah. So that's our intent, right? When we do all the work with our contract research partners, our independent partners, even the stuff internally on the own farm, we're trying to collect as many data points as we can to minimize variability. And that's something that we're trying to deliver to our customers is we want to give multiple years worth of data. You know, there are many exciting products that are coming to this market. I can think of one this year that got launched that everybody is super excited about. The problem is the unknown, right? You know, I look back and I look at glyphosate, I look at dicamba, I look at 2,4-D. Some of those products have been in the market since the 1950s. You know the good, the bad, and the ugly about everything, right? You know the risks that you assume. With a lot of these biological products today, Zach, they might have been introduced a year ago or 2 years ago. You don't know everything. And that's some of the hesitation that I have as we launch products into the market is what's the good? What's the bad, most importantly? Mm-hmm. And when do we not want to use these products?
Yeah. And there's always, there's a bunch of people asking you about products, but even me now starting to talk about what we're doing on our farm and in our fields, asking about new products, and I say don't use them unless you're going to try them on a little small scale because I don't know for sure what's going to happen. So I don't want to be the one that says to try something and then it fails miserably. But if it's only on a couple acres and you're willing to potentially lose those, that's one thing. But usually when I'm talking about different things, I talk about things we've used a bunch and know what's going to happen and when not to use them, most importantly.
Yeah. Yeah, the last thing we want to do is have a grower have a bad experience, right? And I would say the same to you as you're getting into the operation now is we got to make sure that we're learning, number one, but we got to know, too, when to not use these products because we don't want people to have a bad experience. Mm-hmm. All right. Of all the categories that are out there, what are you most excited about?
I'm most excited about probably different things that help at specific times throughout the year, like when we're already going to be out there for different things. It's not really a category, I would say, but I do think, like, for example, like amino acids, like those specifically help, and those are plant-based amino acids or like plant-based things. I feel like have a way better opportunity to potentially work and help the plant because the plant recognizes it, knows what it is, and there's just more opportunity there with all different nutrients. But I also feel like that's on one end, like foliar applying stuff, but then on the other end, helping with the fertility that's in the soil and like keeping that more available. Because there's a lot of soil in a field, and there's a lot of plant nutrients that are in there that could be locked up on stuff. And I feel like that's just a really big thing to tap into constantly every single year because it's shown so much benefit upside the past few years. I just wonder how much more that we're able to do with that, like going forward, you know?
Yeah, for me, I would say the amount of work that we have done over the past couple of years with phosphorus availability. You know, there's been a huge push because of the higher price of phosphates in the market that growers are wanting to cut back. They're wanting to get more serious about phosphorus applications, which is great. There are some products that look promising, right? That we're capturing data that are making phosphorus more available from the soil, making the plant more efficient with phosphorus. So the amount of work, the amount of dollars that are being spent in this market today, even from when I started back in 2020, I can't even compare the amount of money that's being spent in this marketplace today. So there's real science happening, there's real understanding of how these products are working. And that gets me excited is, you know, how do we get around this noise of, well, it's still snake oil, it's still foo-foo dust, you know, there's all these names out there. How do we get around that? I think we have to continue to build confidence in these products. And there's some companies that are doing a really good job by doing it.
Yeah, I just feel more comfortable when it's not something that's brand new in year one. Now, it could be something amazing in 3 or 5 years.
Right.
But I don't want to, like, put all my eggs into the basket of that it's brand new and I don't know about it yet. Now, I'm not counting anything off because I always want to find something that's going to help us do something better on the farm.
Right.
But I don't want to do that broad scale. That's the other thing too, is just because there's something new doesn't always mean that it's necessarily going to fit your operation perfectly the first time.
All right. Well, thank you for tuning in today to the Agronomy Answers podcast hosted by the better looking Zach Hefty, Matt Thompson. This will probably be my one and only time that I get to host an episode, but you know what? It's been a lot of fun putting Zach on the hot seat. Until next time, Zach, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the Agronomy Answers podcast.